Great. So setting context, so what we're going to be talking today about is forced labor. So with that being said, this is starting of my demonstration. So can anybody tell me what these percentages represent on each of these raw materials? Why are these important? These are all the total share of product originating from Xinjiang in China. What this means is concerns about forced labor, right? And why is that important to you? As a major manufacturer, you don't want to be one of those companies that is impacted by a slide like this. 1 billion US dollars stopped at the border because of tainted supply chain. So I'm Pete DiBenedetto, Solution Architect. I'm going to be spending the next 10 minutes giving you a quick walkthrough of how Exeger can help you identify and mitigate modern slavery risk in your supply chain. The agenda will be an overview of industry challenges, how Exeger's solution works, and then a demonstration. So what are some of the industry challenges that face you today? What are some of the headwinds that will be impacting you? It's really pretty straightforward. Looking at any newspaper these days, you can see constant impacts of issues related to supply chain risk. Why is this happening? Because it really comes in many different forms. You may be familiar with a couple of these, but let's look at one or two of them, right? Regulatory. Are you up to date on the latest regulatory requirements? Cyber attacks. How secure is not only your shipping supply chain and your manufacturing supply chain, but your cyber supply chain? Natural disasters and capacity constraints. All of these have an impact. This is a staggering number. 50% of your year's profit could be erased in a 10-year time because of supply chain issues. Why? Because really, ultimately, companies are unprepared. Think about your existing systems. Do they talk together? Do your leaders talk together? Are you able to get a complete view of the supply chain of where you are buying from? Often what Exeger has found is our customers are more reactive than proactive. So how can Exeger help? Let's look a little bit at our solution. So Exeger is a comprehensive supply chain solution, really end to end, from the companies that make product, whether it's physical good or software, to the components of those, and ultimately the underlying supply chain. Exeger is able to identify and mitigate risk throughout. What you'll see in the demonstration is a single interface that allows for seamless activity from end to end for things such as an end user journey, continuous monitoring and alerting, so that it's not just a snapshot in time. You're looking at the latest adverse media or sanctions, and you're alerted to it so that you don't have to go hunting and pecking for this information. Network mapping and discovery without vendor outreach, and onboarding and mitigation workflows, so that it's not just Exeger raising these alerts. I'm sure you all have used systems that just give you an alert. Shaylin, here's an alert. Alex, here's an alert. Then you're like, what do I do with it? Exeger can help you with that. Exeger's system and the way we do our implementations are designed based on criticality. What does that mean? So we start with all the suppliers in your supply chain, direct and any indirect, and we risk screen them. Risk screening can be across 7 dimensions of risk. If you remember from our last presentation, when I talked about our risk screening, I really did the deep dive into the risk screening capabilities and what those risk elements are. Today, we're really going to look more at not only how those risk results are presented, but how we can help you with your entity level relationship mapping, think sub-tier. And then in a future conversation, what we'll talk about is how Exeger can help with automated item level mapping. What does that mean? That's taking the products that you buy from those suppliers without vendor outreach and creating an artificial bill of materials so then you can automatically identify risk. And for those most critical suppliers, the ones that could impact your operation capability, we do have the full ability to do vendor outreach. This ultimately will be looking at those strategic, most critical suppliers with all those components that we looked at all rolled up. Everything that we talked about not only has risk screening, sub-tier mapping, but there's a full end-to-end workflow integrated into the system. How do we know? We can prove it. We have had successful customers for over 14 years. Some of our largest customers from Raytheon saving over $150 million, Oshkosh and Nissan. So we don't only just talk it, we walk this walk. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go into my demo, but I want to see if there's any questions so far about the presentation. Okay. So let me end my PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to give you a demonstration of our One Exeger solution. I'm going to talk about how One Exeger works. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. And throughout, I'm going to talk a little bit about our workflow capability and our ability to do sub-tier mapping. At the end, we'll look specifically at one of our tools that allow us for sub-tier discovery. Please stop me along the way if you have any questions. So what you're looking at right now is Exeger's One Exeger solution. This is a SaaS solution. That means it's software as a service. So regardless of where you are in the world, whether you're in Vancouver, whether you're in Chicago, Wisconsin, United States, India, Europe, you can access this through an integrated single sign-on. What this means is we're able to control access through role-based access control so that you're able to see only those companies and those individuals that you have permissions to see. This also means that we're able to configure the system so that we can support multiple business groups across your organization. Shaylin, when we talked before, you mentioned about the need for cybersecurity. Alex, you mentioned not only forced labor concerns, but due diligence across 6, 7 different dimensions of risk. Some systems may only be able to do one of those. Exeger is able to support all of that through our configuration. Within the One Exeger solution, you can immediately discover any high-risk entities that have been identified, dive into the sub-tier, or start a new investigation. What's unique about Exeger is our end-to-end supply chain risk management platform. What this allows us to do is to work with you from the start of your journey, whether it's just simple third-party risk management through outreach of questionnaires, to due diligence screening, to supply chain mapping, to automated bill of materials, and ultimately vendor validation, whether that's for physical or cyber good. This one solution will support all of that. Let's talk a little bit about a day in the life. As a user, when you log into Exeger, you can risk screen new customers, suppliers, distributors, and through the One Exeger solution, as I mentioned, these can be shared across your organization with configuration to show different types of risk. So Alex, for forced labor, we can configure this so those 6 dimensions of risk we talked about before are the only ones that we're looking at. Shaylin, we're able to look across multiple different dimensions for you. Users can manually enter a new supplier, or they can batch upload a supply list. What this means is you yourselves are able to come in with a list of suppliers. So if I had a list of new distributors such as Rapid Aid, Contemporary Amprex, CNA, and Chinalco, I can quickly upload these into my solution by just mapping to these. I can say I want to add these in, and I'm not sure where it went, so bear with me here real quick. All right, so we're able to upload those into 3 p.m. And then once the risk screening has occurred, you can see my prior risk screening. These results will be available within one Exeger. A couple of things to note about the way this works. Once we do the search, we're then able to enrich the content, which means we're adding additional details to it. And then also you have the ability to add different type of reports. So do you want to do a due diligence, a deep dive due diligence? Do you want to do just a certain aspect of concern from cybersecurity or forced labor? Exeger's one Exeger solution allows you to do this across the board. Once the results are finished, you'll be able to come into the all profile and view the entities that you ran and see the overall risk score. One of the new features that have been added into the solution is called projects. What projects allows us to do now is within an organization, we can work on specific groups of suppliers by different type of risk ranking, by different business use cases for different reasons. So for today, I have mine that I entered in just a minute ago through the batch upload. You can see my entities here from Rapid Aid, Contemporary Amperex, CNA, and Chinalco. Usually what we recommend is you start with the highest risk entities. So looking at Contemporary Amperex technology, I can quickly drill in to see the risk dimensions that are important to me. Here, we see that 3 high-risk dimensions have been identified from foreign ownership, reputational, criminal, and regulatory, and environmental, social, and governance. The other risk dimensions that you're familiar with, operational risk, which includes cyber, as well as financial health. One of the new ones that I really want to bring your attention to is custom risk. Custom risk is the ability of Exeger to bring in both your own information. So when you onboard suppliers, when you put them into your ERP system, we can capture information automatically through our questionnaires, through our application programming interface that allows for a two-way integration, and bring those in from our questionnaires where we're outreaching to our suppliers. As I mentioned, everything within the solution has a workflow capability to it, which I'll show you in a minute. For today, let's take a look at environmental, social, and governance risks. This is usually one of the driving factors behind things such as forced labor, modern slavery. You yourselves may not only worry about forced labor, you may look at things related to regulatory concerns. So whether it's EUDR in Europe, Canadian forced labor list, Exeger continuously screens for these new relevant risks. You can see that the system is breaking these down across each dimension, from social risk to environmental risk to governance risk. Each of these have hyperlinks or active links that allow you to go out to view the underlying article, as well as the details about when they were found. While we're talking about forced labor today, just to show you kind of the breadth of this, we can also look at the environmental list on here, or environmental risk. And what I want to highlight in here is the discovered countries. This is often very important for forced labor screening, because when you bring on a supplier, they may only give you their headquarters address, which could be in a low risk jurisdiction such as the United States, Mexico, Brazil perhaps. But through Exeger's corporate unwrapping, we're able to identify other locations to ensure that you're doing proper screening across all relevant jurisdictions.
Hey, Pete, I got a question.
Sure,
Sorry
please.
to interrupt. You're talking about identifying the other locations just now. Is that like subsidiaries or factory, like associated entities within that company? I'm just curious what you mean by like other, what it's pulling in when you mention other jurisdictions.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Great question. So think about it when you start your screening of your supplier, and as part of onboarding, you're probably asking them a question such as, where are you located? Some suppliers may give you a full list. Some often what I've seen is they'll just give you the name of the company and their headquarters. Exeger's risk screening, what it does is using corporate records, open source adverse media, as well as structured data sources to understand the ownership structure, we're able to pull out and identify other manufacturing sites, other subsidiaries, as well as beneficial owners and ultimate owners, so that you have that full scope of who are the companies that we're working with. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we can review each of these dimensions of risk, but really the goal here is to highlight the breadth of what One Exeter brings to the table through our risk dimension. As I mentioned before, because of the integrated nature of the solution, we're able to look at the workflow for contemporary Amprex. Typically, the way our workflow works is we will onboard a customer, either through an application programming interface with your ERP system, such as SAP or Reba, which we have connectors with, or through one of your own homegrown systems, or as I showed you, through a batch upload. What this will automatically do is kick off onboarding workflow. So what you're looking at are steps that have been configured so that you
We lost Pete.
Worried it was
I
me.
did.
Yeah, I did too.
I had a huge freeze on my side, so I don't know if it was a Teams thing. Like all of you froze, so
Shay, do you want to ping Pete?
Yeah.
Can we pause the recording or?
it'll make it into separate recordings if you stop it and then start it again.
Oh,
We
But
can
then
have
you can
Ben.
just blend them
We can have
together.
Ben. We can have Ben edit it.
sure.
All right.
So it's like the most unfortunate place where they pause, where the video paused for Pete.
Yeah. It's like when you pause the TV, you always catch people in a very funny face.
There we go. Who knows what it was? I feel like this happens to me like when I'm not paying attention that my computer's been unplugged for a while. And then it just dies when I'm like in the middle of a presentation. Although that never happened to me while I was on Illuminations. I always made sure my computer was charging.
It's so unfortunate. He was so warmed up and into it.
Yeah, man, he was just hitting his stride too. I thought it was me because like our cleaners are here, and I was like, did they like knock out the Wi-Fi by accident?
Am I back?
You're back.
All right,
Yep.
good stuff. All right, so did I lose you guys like in an insight? Is that where I lost you all?
Yes.
Okay.
And don't worry about that part. We'll have it edited.
Okay, the magic of technology. All right, so can you guys see insight now?
Yes.
Good. All right, now my system's all catching up on me. So, all right. So, all right. So, yeah. So part of onboarding full workflow capabilities through contemporary Amprex technology. What's important about that is if you think about how you do onboarding now, you may have Excel spreadsheets, different forms that allow you to capture this information. These workflows are fully configurable so that each of you will have a different workflow targeted to your different business units. What is unique about this as well as based on the information that is captured, either through the questionnaire or through the DDIQ screening, the risk screening, this will drive the risk score so that you
Oh no.
Again?
did I lose you guys?
Yeah, he froze up again.
Yeah. Now you're back.
Nope.
Never mind.
You should probably do a full reboot if it's going to do that every couple minutes.
Are we having fun yet? All right, I'm going to skip that part of insight. I feel like it's cursed.
Yeah, let's
So-
go back to the overall risk score.
I think you guys get the point.
Yes.
All right. So, let me get rid of that. All right. So, workflow capabilities, contemporary Amprex. What I want to highlight next is when we go back and we look at the next supplier in our group that we want to talk about today, let's look at CNA and International. One of the key things related to Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act is the ability to look at sub-tier risk. One exeger does this automatically with no vendor outreach, no need to ask for validation. Here we have CNA International, and what I want to point out about this is you can see now for this one, we're doing a very targeted screening, only looking at 2 dimensions of risk for forced labor: ESG, environmental, social, and governance, reputational, criminal, and regulatory. If we go look at the network tab, where we're able to look at sub-tier risk automatically by looking at millions of shipping records overlaid with watch list details, we immediately start seeing concerns at a sub-tier level. You yourselves can filter this to specific areas of risk that you're interested in or concerned about. So today we can look at human rights, but if you're worried about conflict minerals, environmental damages, we're able to do this down to your tier 2, as well as to look who they're selling to. So this means that you're not only looking at who they're buying from, so in this instance, who's in CNA's international supply chain, but who are they selling it to? So today we're just going to look upstream and drill in to see what this looks like from a sub-tier risk standpoint. So we have one entity, Changhong Meiying, as a supplier that has concerns about human rights. Within the One Exeger Network's capability, we're able to drill in to see details around the human rights. So here we can see this was verified just recently as far as October 1st. And we're able to see the flow of goods, so that here we see 11 shipments from Changhong to CNA coming up to almost $447,000. What this allows you to do then is prioritize what you do next. Because of the size of the shipments in here, what we can do is we can actually investigate not only to show the path, we can drill into what is called Supply Chain Explorer to look at more details. Why would you want to do that? Because it comes down to criticality of the supply chain. We saw that you're buying almost $500,000 from this company. You may want to see who else is involved in the supply chain. Who is that company, Hefe Mining, buying from? Supply Chain Explorer allows you to do that. So now what we're looking at is CNA. We can see a total of 11 shipments sent or received, and we can view how this information or how these shipments have been received across the supply chain. Exeger Supply Chain Explorer allows you to not only see the company, but where the goods are loaded and unloaded. This is really important because if you think about disruption events, if you remember the Baltimore Bridge collapse here in the United States, the earthquake down in Taiwan, you want to be able to identify where you're at risk, and Exeger Supply Chain Explorer allows you to do that. You're able to see the specific details of the type of goods that have been shipped, as well as the flow of good from left to right from RCNA International to Hefe Milling at the tier 1 level. We're able to get a similar view down the supply chain, not only from CNA to Hefe Milling, but now from tier 1 down to tier 2. We can see where the bills of lading, we start seeing the components in here. And what we're able to visualize now is who is Hefe Milling buying from. So we see exposure to Sri Lanka, Mexico, China, and India. So that now before you start mitigation activities, you have a complete understanding of this supply chain. Everything within Supply Chain Explorer can be downloaded. This means you can take this for external use. We also are able to overlay watch list details, as well as to drill in the actual source information. So if you want to see the actual details, so the line by line items, including things like HS codes, all of that's available to you within the Supply Chain Explorer audit log. So here we see shipment dates from 2 years ago. We see details about their addresses and alternative names. We see the tier 2 supplier, as well as the details of the shipped goods. The important,
I have
yeah, please.
oops.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, where is all of that information coming from? I understood the other stuff was coming from the DDIQ platform, but
Sure.
how are these relationships being established and where is it all coming from?
Yeah, so great question. And so what Exeter has done is not only as part of risk screening, are we going out and looking at adverse media and structured data sources and corporate records in 96 different languages. What we're looking at here is shipment data. So shipment data, what we're bringing in is shipment information from over 212 different countries, including Suez Canal shipments. All of that information is being brought in, standardized, because if you think about it, Shaylin, think about all the different spellings of contemporary Amperex technology, Inc., LTD, maybe it's just cattle. So that is where we're bringing this information in from, is all of these shipment records. I think there's some new number, like we'll say like 10 billion shipment records, which is just a large number. But what that allows us to do is all of that's coming in. Included in there are who the consignee is, and who the suppliers are, along with HS codes, the date of the shipment, the port of lading and unlading. That answer your question?
It does, thanks.
Sure.
Hey,
So-
Pete, I also
Oh,
had
yes.
I also had a question.
Sure, please.
And now I've just forgotten it. But does this data, so I understand we're talking about maritime shipment records. Does this data also include any information related to airway bills of lading or like rail and truck transit for goods?
Yes, so absolutely. So thank you. That's a good clarify. I should have made that clarifying comment too. So our bills of lading, our shipment data is not just like oceans, right? So a couple of things to note here. The information we're looking at right now is through no vendor validation. We're not reaching out to suppliers asking them for this data. This is coming from shipment records. Those shipment records are shipments that are coming across the ocean, through rails across the border, as well as air freight. But the key takeaway here, and what I want to add on to your question, Olivia, is this is inter-country shipments, right? So going to be across borders. So that is what the data is we're looking at now. The next question, which you may ask, is, well, what about inter-country, right? Intra-country, how do I look at that? Exeter does that with a component of the solution called supply dynamics, which is not in scope of today's demo. We can line up people to present that to you. But what that allows us to do is get to that next level of, great, I understand all the shipments coming in from my suppliers across the border, but I want to know about intra-country shipments. We can do that as well. That often, though, involves vendor validation. Good. Thank you. All right, so let's go back. So if we go back into Supply Chain Explorer and we actually go back to our Networks tab, what is nice is, because of the integrated nature of the system, from within here now, we could actually initiate diligence. What this means is now that we could do an investigation, we could do vendor outreach or supplier outreach, all from within this one system, okay? So this is really the high points of looking at CNA from a sub-tier network standpoint. One of the other things that I really want to touch on in here briefly, and what I'm going to do is I want to talk about mitigation activities. Okay, so we talked about onboarding activities. So we talked about the ability to have workflow for different onboarding steps. But once we have a customer onboarded, what type of functionality does Exeter bring to the table for mitigation activities? So what I'm going to show you now is really that view for contemporary Amperex technology again. But now what we're looking at is going to look at what it looks like if we wanted to mitigate risk. So what you're seeing is Exeter's breadth of our workflow capabilities. We're talking about onboarding. We saw the steps for onboarding. We looked about due diligence. We can talk about different questionnaires, but the important takeaway here are the workflow of mitigation and approvals. Exeter's implementation team will work with you to identify the appropriate mitigation activities as well as approvals for all of your different business units, all your different business units as well as those users and use cases that will be implemented into the system. As I mentioned earlier, these can be configured to each of you specifically. And what is nice about this is these questionnaires can be supported in multiple languages. So we can look at all the different languages that are supported. So you can build a language, you can build a questionnaire in English, send it out, and then the recipient of that could toggle that over to Greek or French based on their requirements. Once that information is captured, everything is viewable in a consolidated entity report. So now looking at Contemporary Amprex, we can see a lot of critical information in here. We can see supplier types. We see information about emissions, which I know is not something that you all are looking at right now, but this really goes to Exeger supporting the growth of your organization, that when you start looking at things like CBAM, carbon emissions concerns, we're able to support that. Monitoring, any unread or noticed monitoring alerts will be available in here, along with refreshes. So refreshes are Exeger's a way to automate the vendor outreach through questionnaires. It could be additional due diligence. It's all configurable based on your requirements and based on your area of risk. All the activities that have been completed, you can see here in an audit log. And if, for example, we wanted to look at what an ESG questionnaire looks like, we can quickly drill in and see how these users or this supplier answered this questionnaire. You can see the ability to change the language here, and this can also be downloaded for PDF. I know that was one of the questions that you all raised before was, how do I export this? What if I want to take this to audit or legal? Everything within the system can be downloaded. There's full case management notes, so you're able to add your notes into the system as well, so that you understand what is going on with these suppliers, as well as the ability to post any documents. So Exeger's workflow capability allows you to do end-to-end workflow based on criticality with logic branching, multiple languages for both supplier outreach through questionnaires. Those questionnaires, when they come back in, as we talked about before, can drive the risk scores. So here is an example where Contemporary Amprex completed the questionnaire, and based on those answers, we drove the weight score as well as comments in here. This also is showing factors for the criticality and the risk scores from within the risk screening engine. All of this is also able to be connected. Oh, sorry, question?
Yes. So sometimes company could have, I'm seeing, like you showed us an example where companies could have a low risk score, but probably one of the board members could be a problematic persona. Could we do some sort of mapping through the platform about this person?
Yeah, so great question. So we call that, there's a couple different ways to answer that. So first of all, we could call that an affiliate, right? It's an individual that's associated with the company. And actually, if you look at the scenario that we're looking at here with cattle, you actually see an affiliate of Matt Strauss. He's a manager. So what you're able to do is you're able to build these associations up within the solution. These associations can be fed from your existing systems, or they can be built within the system automatically. What is nice about this approach then, because what you're then may wondering is, well, all right, so now I have these associations. How do I find out if they're a politically exposed person or if they're a sanctioned individual? Exeger's risk screening capability allows you to screen for both companies and individuals, so that that risk screening capability will identify, is Matt a PEP? Is he on a sanctions list? Exeger will also do corporate unwrapping to identify any known entities that are associated through ownership and risk screen those as well. Did that help? Excellent.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to pause here. So what we've talked about so far is the one Exeger solution, how we can do batch uploads, how we can do manual screening, how we're able to view Exeger's risk screening results across 6 dimensions of risk, network, sub-tier risk, and mitigation. We're also talking about workflow, how Exeger can support your requirement for specific workflows from forced labor, to onboarding, all tailored to your specific requirements. What I want to do in the last couple of minutes of this demonstration is talk about a little bit more about Exeger's discovery tool or Supply Chain Explorer. So I'm going to share my screen, and it lets me go over there. Okay, come on. Try this again. It's the technology day, isn't it? Oh, all right. Try this again. Okay, so Exeger Supply Chain Explorer allows you to look at those shipment records. I showed you an example earlier when we were doing that deep dive into CNA, but I really think it's worthwhile to spend 2 to 3 minutes talking about really the larger capabilities of Supply Chain Explorer. Supply Chain Explorer is broken into 3 components. Commerce. Think about shipping records. We discussed just a couple minutes ago all the different shipment information that we bring in. Cyber, where we're actually able to map a cyber supply chain. So as you yourselves are bringing in software, you may want to know, is this company a safe company to do business with? And then also contracts. Contracts are more for our federal customers, so I'm not going to spend much time there. But what I want to highlight today is I really want to show you an example of a cyber supply chain. Cyber supply chains, here is a company called Neilsoft. You can see that they have 411 different software packages that they have purchased. You may be thinking about bringing this company in-house because what they provide is engineering services and engineering software. So before any onboarding, before they even cross the threshold into your organization, using Supply Chain Explorer, you can do a discovery overview. What that means is by entering in the company of interest, so we entered in Neilsoft, we can dive in and we can see an overview of their cybersecurity supply chain. What does that mean? Just like physical goods, what we looked at a minute ago, we're now able to see who are the companies Neilsoft is buying from. We see where they're located around the world. They have entities possibly in India and the United States. We see the top software products they're buying, and we're actually able to visualize how we're validating that. So Exeger validates cyber supply chains in a number of different ways. We're pulling in millions and billions of signatures from resumes. So think about when you're posting resumes online, you're telling what your skill sets are, what companies are looking for from a skill set. Those come from job postings. We're doing digital signatures based on the software that we're screening online, as well as technographics, which is actually cracking open the website itself to see different signatures in there. We're able to look at the flow of goods, just like we did from the physical goods. So now what we're seeing is Neilsoft, based in India, buying goods from the United States, Germany, and Sweden, and who they're buying from. We can drill in because I think Neilsoft Solutions is a different entity. So we can select Neilsoft targeting just this Indian entity. And just as before, now we see the main products that they're purchasing. And now what we're able to do is go down the cyber security supply chain. Same type of view, where we're validating it from. But now what we start seeing is who are those tier 1 companies interacting with? We see footprints in Switzerland, India, back into United States, through different companies down to tier 2. What's interesting about this is if we go down to tier 2, you see exposure to some interesting countries. So now, while we're worried about forced labor in our supply chain, if we were also worried, because some of you may be worried about exposure to Russia or China in general, do you want Russia in your software supply chain? Am I worried about components being built in China that either could be compromised because of hacking or could be related to forced labor entities? Exeger allows you to understand these goods and apply that same paradigm that we looked at before from the physical goods to software. Exeger screens through our system for cyber risk What it provides back is a cybersecurity hygiene score on a 0 to 100 basis, with the higher number being better, just like in school. So what you're able to see is companies that have very poor cyber hygiene across 10 dimensions of risk. These are continuously updated so that these are not just a snapshot in time. All of this is overlaid with watch list as well. So now if we were interested in any sanctioned or human rights concerns at a software level, we could see which companies are in my cybersecurity supply chain that have sanctions or human rights concerns. And what you see here are companies, Microsoft, Google, that have exposure because of ties to China. We see BlackBerry and some other candidates in here, but we can also drill down further into specific dimensions of risk. So what this really does is this allows you to not only to understand.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on the watch list.
Sure.
Do you mind, what kinds of watch lists? Is it only U.S. government watch lists, or are we covering all friendly jurisdictions? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so absolutely. So important question there. So what watch lists are included? So whether you're looking at a physical good or a cyber good, we are looking at pulling in data from World Compliance is our main source for our secure Supply Chain Explorer watch list, but that's also being added to via Exeger's proactive intelligence. This is an important component because World Compliance is looking globally at different watch list concerns. This also is being added to through Exeger Proactive Intelligence, which is keeping up to date with the most recent regulations. So new entities being put on the Uyghur forced labor, new EUDR regulations, new sanctioned Russian and Chinese entities. In addition to that, we're looking at conflict minerals, as well as hack notice. All of these are being consolidated within the watch list. That help?
It does. Thank you.
Sure. So that
Hey, Pete.
really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no question. I just wanted to give you a couple-minute warning heads up.
Okay, yeah, I'm wrapping up. Thank you, Shayla.
Perfect.
So what we've looked at today is Exeger's ability from one Exeger, an integrated solution, to manually, batch, or through API, risk screen your suppliers, categorize them based on each of your different user groups, whether it's for forced labor, which was what we're really highlighting today, being able to screen across 6 dimensions of risk, or as I showed you with CNA, being able to look at 2 risk dimensions related to forced labor. But in CNA's dimension, we didn't find any forced labor. We saw very low risk, but we found risk in the supply chain, which is an important component for Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. You have to be able to look down supply chain risk. We then also further dove into the underlying support of that, how workflow, mitigation, onboarding activities, as well as case management, documentation, and being able to build those affiliate suppliers picture. And then kind of wrapped it all up in a bow by looking at Supply Chain Explorer from a cyber standpoint. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful as an overview for Exeger. I will wrap up there. Any questions?
All right. If we've got no questions, I will just quickly share my screen again with the little feedback slide. So we'll take some time, go around the horn. Anyone with general kind of high-level feedback on the presentation or anything specific, we'll cover off, and then we'll have Pete drop from the call to deliberate. Alex, did you want to kick us off?
I'm Pete, no surprise, you did a fantastic job. Felt like the entire time I was getting ready to ask a question, you would jump, but you would answer it right away. I was about to be like, hey, what's that batch upload feature? And you went right to it. And I was like, okay, well, now I gotta think of another question. Your flow is great. I think what I really appreciated is that you spend a lot of time in the product or in the solutions and not so much on the PowerPoint. I feel like when I've seen these, a lot of people get caught up in the PowerPoint and they don't have time to really dive into the demo. You flip that. You have plenty of time to do the demo. You have plenty of time to explain all the important features. and it wasn't buttonology, which is really greatly appreciated. I really have no like constructive criticism or constructive feedback because you just did such a great job.
Cool. Thank you, Alex.
All right, Safe.
Honestly, it was amazing. Like, the only thing that it's not related to you, Pete, it's actually that it's still probably we need to find a way to avoid jumping from the legacy, which is not legacy, it's actually one exeger sending us to other pages. It could be a little bit confusing for someone who is being exposed to one exeger, but that's the way it is for now. So other than that, it was really amazing.
Thank you.
Masterclass.
Thank you.
All right, Olivia.
Yeah, Pete, it was awesome. I can tell you do this every day. Sorry, the cat likes when I speak, apparently. Like Alex said, you really preempted every time I was like, okay, I'm about to ask this question. You kind of got right to that, which is just, I think you're in front of customers all day, every day. The only like really nitpick for me, having incredibly difficult customers, is that SCE does not have comprehensive airway bill, rail, or road information. There is a small subset of it that comes in through Panjiva, but we do not have comprehensive coverage there. But otherwise, it was awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, Kevin.
Yeah. First, thank you, Olivia, for pre-answering that, because that was new information for me. I'm trying to be the SME for SCE, and that was like, I was like, wait, it does? I didn't know that yet. So it's good to know. It's critical for me to know that. Yeah, I will say from my perspective, from SCE, it was awesome to see the like you just set it up really well to describe the networks and kind of how, and then also how the legacy quote unquote version of SCE still has a ton of usefulness too. So I think that was a great way to present that. You also knocked out so much stuff in a really quick time frame. So very impressive.
Even with like 5 to 6 minutes of you being away and frozen on screen, you still got everything in well within the time frame.
Felt like that was a like real life scenario. It's like, all right, let's add a little trouble here.
Yeah, number one rules
you.
of live demos, right? They always something always goes wrong.
Insight was
I feel like,
for you today.
Yeah, when you went back into Insight later, I was like,
yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything new or original to add. I think Safe and I were saying, it's like, oh, I'm just like enjoying listening to this. It's like an interesting perspective to hear someone talk about the ways that all the solutions are connected, because we often just kind of watch the one at a time presentations.
Okay.
And those can often feel tight on time because of how much time people spend speaking on the slides and going through, every button. And so I think, to echo Alex's point, we really appreciated like having more time in the solution and less time on the slides. There was like no wasted words or text on slides or anything like that. So the fact that you were able to fit everything in and it didn't feel rushed at all just speaks to how familiar you are with the products and the best points to highlight. So yeah.
Oh, one thing, and sorry guys, my dog is like, she's like, hello. So like, I'd like to be a part of this. One thing I really like too, Pete, is, and I've seen this a lot more recently, is that you like, we give you PowerPoints and like I've described them as like a canvas. Like you can use it, you don't have to. You can create your own. I like that you create your own because you really guide the audience in with what you're going to talk about and fits well into that persona. So like, I always appreciate when someone takes what we gave them and they're like, I'm gonna change it, and like, I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Anyone have anything else for Pete before we get him to drop? All right, cool.
Thanks for everybody's time.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Take care.
I'll reach out as soon as we're done.
Okay, thanks, Salem. Bye.
Yep, bye.
All right, huge no from me.
Dude, you gotta wait till she stops recording. We had this